When my son said, "Honey, take mom's card. There's $130,000 on it. Treat yourself." I smiled instead of crying. That smile, it wasn't real. It was a wall, built to hide the ache that had lived inside me for years. He didn't know how that money came into being. He didn't know the stories written behind each dollar. He didn't know that the card he called Mom's Savings was once my only hope on dark, hungry nights. As his wife took the card from the table, her eyes sparkled with excitement. She thanked him sweetly and said, "Thank you, darling. You're always so kind." He smiled back at her, proud, loving, not realizing his words had just broken his mother's heart. I sat quietly at the end of the sofa. The sound of their laughter filled the room, soft, cheerful, and distant. I wanted to tell him that every cent in that account was once soaked in my sweat, that when he went to college, I worked double shifts and skipped meals, just so his dreams could stay alive. But I said nothing. Instead, I looked out the window, at the small garden I had planted years ago. The flowers were blooming, bright, alive, and unaware of the storm inside me. In that moment, I realized something painful yet true. Sometimes the people you love the most forget the hands that built their comfort. And all you can do is smile and let the silence speak for you. I wasn't always this quiet woman sitting in the corner. Once my house was full of laughter, the smell of fresh food, and the small feet of a little boy running around calling, "Ammy, Ammy." That boy was my world. After my husband passed away, he became the reason I woke up every morning. I promised myself that my son would never feel poor, even if I had to live with less. So I worked. Days at the factory, nights at home sewing clothes for neighbors. I learned how to stretch one loaf of bread for 2 meals. And every time I saved a little, I would whisper, "This is for his future." Years passed. He grew tall, handsome, educated. And then he met her. A gentle, modern girl with bright eyes and big dreams. He loved her deeply. And I loved her too, in the way a mother tries to love who her son loves. When they married, I moved to the smaller room in the back. I didn't mind. I told myself, it's their time now. I just wanted peace. To cook, to pray, and to see them happy. But happiness has a strange way of changing faces. What once felt like family started to feel like distance. Not through words, but through silence. The kind that slowly fills a home until even love starts whispering. Still I smiled. Because that's what mothers do when the walls start listening more than people. It started with small things. A missing smile at breakfast. A closed door when I passed by. A whisper that ended when I entered the room. At first I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe they were just busy. But hearts know when love begins to fade. My daughter-in-law stopped sitting with me at tea. My son stopped asking if I'd eaten. Dinner became quieter. And soon they began eating without me. One night, I heard her say softly, "Your mother worries too much. She should rest and let us handle things." And he replied, "She's old now. She doesn't understand today's world." I stood by the door, hands trembling, listening to the 2 people I loved most in the world, discussing my place in it, like I was a piece of furniture that needed moving. I wanted to cry, but instead I cleaned the kitchen, folded the clothes, and prayed that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow wasn't. Days turned into weeks. The laughter I once heard every evening now lived only in my memories. I missed him, not the man he had become, but the little boy who once held my hand and said he'd never let me go. Sometimes I'd stand outside their door, hearing them plan holidays, new cars, new dreams, dreams I once worked my life for, and I'd whisper to myself, "It's enough that he's happy." But deep down, I wondered if he even remembered who gave up happiness for his. That evening felt strange from the start. The air was heavy, the house too quiet. My son came home early, his face calm, and she followed him, holding a small envelope. "Mom," he said softly, "we've been thinking, maybe it's time you take a little rest. You've done enough. You don't need to worry about anything now." He smiled, the same gentle smile that once melted my heart. But that day, It felt like a goodbye hidden behind kindness. Then she placed my bank card on the table. Her nails tapped on it lightly. "This one has your savings," she said. "Maybe you should let us handle the account. We'll keep it safe." My breath stopped for a moment. I looked at the card. The same one that carried my lifetime of struggle. And before I could say a word, my son added, "Honey, take Mom's card. There's $130,000 on it. Treat yourself." His words echoed inside me. Treat yourself. He didn't know those savings weren't a luxury. They were my safety, the money I had saved. For his children, for emergencies. For the days when I'd no longer have strength to work. I wanted to tell him the truth. That this card was not just money. It was my life. But instead I smiled. Because if a mother tells her son that his love hurts her, it breaks something that never heals. Later that night, when everyone slept, I sat with that empty card in my hand and whispered to myself, "It's all right. He just doesn't know." Days turned into weeks. They thought I didn't notice the small changes. How she carried the new purse. How he came home with a lighter tone in his voice. How the card never came back to my drawer. But I noticed. Mothers always notice. We just choose silence over confrontation. I spent my mornings watering the plants, feeding the birds, pretending life was the same. But inside, a quiet ache kept whispering. Did he forget who built his peace? One afternoon, while cleaning his old room, I found a small box. Inside were his childhood drawings, his broken toy car, and a note that said, "One day I'll buy you a big house, Amy." I sat on the floor, holding that note against my chest. Tears came, but they were soft. Not of anger, but of love that still refused to fade. That night, when he came home tired, I served him food like always. He smiled faintly and said, "Thanks, Mom." Just that. 2 words, but enough to remind me that somewhere inside him, my little boy still lived. I didn't ask for the card. I didn't ask for money. Because what I wanted couldn't be bought. A little attention. A small conversation. A hand on mine. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'd realize that love doesn't need a balance in a bank. It only needs presence. Months passed. The seasons changed. But the distance between us stayed the same. Then one morning, my son knocked on my door. He looked tired, worried. "Mom," he said quietly, "I just checked the account. There's almost nothing left. I think we made a mistake." He looked down, like a child caught doing something wrong. I didn't ask what happened. I didn't need to. I simply said, "It's all right, Beta. Money comes and goes. As long as you both are safe, I'm happy." He looked at me with eyes full of guilt. "Mom, you knew." I smiled gently. "Yes. But I also knew that one day, you'd understand what it really meant." He sat beside me for the first time in months. No words, just silence. The kind that heals instead of hurts. I placed my hand on his head, the way I used to when he was a little boy. And in that quiet moment, I forgave him. Not because he asked, but because a mother's heart doesn't know how not to. That night, as I prayed, I didn't ask for the money to return. I asked for love to return to this house. And somehow it did. He started having tea with me again. His wife helped me in the kitchen. The laughter slowly found its way back into the walls. The card may have been empty, but my heart was full again. Sometimes you lose money to find meaning. Sometimes you lose silence to find love. And sometimes you realize that forgiveness is the richest thing a mother can ever own.